Only is a movie about a deadly virus, but men can only be carriers of this virus, but it is highly deadly to women. It's a pretty slow movie, and it doesn't have much action or violence or anything like that in it, but it has a couple things that put it right at the edge of an R rating. The two main characters are Eva and Will. Eva is played by Freida Pinto, and Will is played by Leslie Odom Jr. It also has Chandler Riggs, Jason Warder Smith, and Joshua Mikael, who are best known from the Walking Dead series. The first kind of tense scene is when some military people come into Will and Eva's apartment. Eva has to hide under the bed so that they don't find out that she's there, because then they will take her to a facility to test if she's sick. Not much happens in this scene. They question Will and search the house for anyone else. One of the military officers gets close to the bed Eva is hiding under, and it seems like they're gonna find her, but they never do, and then they leave. It bounces back and forth a lot between the current day, which is day 400 of the virus outbreak, and different stages of their quarantine inside their apartment. Like, it goes to day 1, and then it has a couple times in the middle, like day 200 something. And it shows Eva dealing with having to stay in her apartment all this time. And there's times where she gets really depressed or upset, especially when they get closer towards the 400th day, that Eva is getting really upset at Will and saying that he's trying to control her because he has this forced quarantine he put on her and not letting her leave. So it has some thematic elements like dealing with a virus outbreak and depression. There's some domestic disputes. There's a time where Eva pulls a gun on Will. So there are situations like that throughout the movie whenever it flashes back to them quarantined to the apartment. The first thing that might raise the rating is that Will and Eva go to a grocery store, and there is a worker there, and he pulls Ava's hat off to see that she is a woman. So Will holds him at gunpoint and makes him promise not to tell anyone before he lets him go, and it's pretty clear that he's going to shoot him if he doesn't agree to let them leave. There's a scene where they go to the diner, and it's kind of questionable if people are finding out that Ava's not a man. Which brings up one question of, if this is a post-apocalyptic world, how do they still have electricity, and why are they still using money and all this other normal stuff? It's like it wants to be like a post-apocalyptic movie, but yet it doesn't. It gets kind of confusing at times. But then when the time comes, they both leave in a hurry, and this is where we're introduced to the two antagonists, Casey and Arthur, and this is where things start to get more than PG rated. Arthur and Casey start tracking down Eva and Will because they suspect Ava's a woman and want to turn her in for the reward money. The first instance of anything like sexual content is when Eva and Will start to get intimate in a tent. It doesn't show anything, and it stops pretty abruptly because Eva starts to have a seizure. Later on, Casey and Arthur find Eva and Will's campsite. So they go up to it, and Will is trying to find Eva. So Casey holds Will at gunpoint and ties him to a tree. And Eva is off on her own, and she goes and hides while they're looking for her. Arthur almost finds her, but she goes into a hiding spot. And during this time, she goes into another seizure. Later that night, Casey is standing watch and Arthur is sleeping. And Ava comes back and she's completely naked. But since it's dark, you only see her silhouette. She walks up to Casey, and since he's a teenager, he's kind of distracted by her being naked. And then she knocks him out with a rock and unties Will. So Will grabs Casey's rifle and starts shooting it into the tent that Arthur is in. And Arthur shoots the bullet back and hits Will in the leg. It's really the only instance of violence, and there's no blood or gore in it. But you can hear both Arthur and Will yelling in pain, and Arthur is yelling at Casey, trying to see if he's okay. So Will and Ava run off, and that's the last we ever see of these two guys. So, who knows what happened to them? I guess they died there? The only instance of language in this entire movie is a scene from the 400th day, which is the day that Ava gets sick and they both leave the apartment. Before that happens, Ava gets a call from her father, and she finds out that her mother has been taken to the medical research facility. So she tries talking to her dad, but Will stops it, because if he didn't, then it would have alerted the authorities of where they were, which it does because they come to the door. She's trying to get the phone back, and they get into a fight, and the F word is said 9 times in this scene. 4 of them are pretty consecutive, but it's mostly blocked out because they're both yelling at each other.
Ava! Are you kidding me? Can I just stop? I'm not giving you the phone, okay?
The other 5 times are throughout about a 3 to 5 minute scene where Casey is angry and yelling, so she says the F word about 5 more times. She also pulls a gun on Will during this scene and tells him to leave. So once he leaves, she puts on a hazmat suit and goes outside. When Will comes back for her, he finds her standing on the roof, and she takes off the hazmat suit, kind of as a form of suicide, because she knows she's gonna get sick. Also, this shows that forced quarantine doesn't work, because after a while, people are gonna start going crazy. But anyway, Will sees her do this, and breaks down crying, and she sees him and realizes what she's done. So that circles back to the beginning of the movie, where they found out that she was sick. Then we see them sitting at the waterfall, where she wrote the date of her death on her arm, and they take a picture together, and that's the end of the movie. This movie doesn't really have anything that would give it an R, except for that one scene of language. Other than that, there's a lot of thematic elements, like depression, dealing with a virus outbreak, loss of life, and in a way, suicidal actions. There's also a little bit of violence, like people pointing guns at other people, or shooting at each other. There's some sexual situations, like the short tent scene, or when Ava gets naked as a distraction, and just that one scene with strong language. If the MPAA were to rate this movie, they would give it an R for language. But I feel that while the number of the F words said is borderline to justify an R, since it was just in one scene, and it was a very angry, people being upset scene, and it was less than 5 minutes, I feel like that should push it down below the R rating. So I think this movie would deserve to be rated PG-13 for violence, sexual content, thematic elements, and language. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, Subscribe to my channel for more videos based on movies and their MPAA rating. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at MovieMortalYT. Thanks for watching.